Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's scoping meeting for the fields at Alamo Creek. It is now 6 o'clock. We're just going to wait a few more minutes to let anybody who's running late or anybody who's having trouble getting into the meeting to trickle in. So please hang tight for the next few minutes. All right, it is now 6:05. Thank you again, everybody, for attending tonight's scoping meeting for the fields at Alamo Creek. We are now going to get started. So for tonight's meeting, we're going to start off with some introductions with who is here from the city, who is here from the city's environmental consultant, Dudek, and also who is here from the project applicant team. We'll then move on to the purpose and the objectives of tonight's scoping meeting, followed by an overview of the proposed Fields at Alamo Creek project. Then we'll move on to what is the proposed scope of the environmental review for this project. And then we'll solicit any comments or questions that any members of the public may have for this meeting. If you're unable to attend this meeting today, or if you're watching the recording, you are always free to send questions and comments to us, to city staff. That contact info will be available later on in the presentation. And then finally, after some questions and comments to round out the presentation. We'll be outlining the next few steps as the project moves forward. So just for some introductions from the City of Vacaville's Planning Division, tonight we have myself. My name is Noah Rambawa. I'm an assistant planner with the city's planning division. We also have Albert Enolt, who is our senior planner, and Payman Bivand, who is our planning manager. I'd also like to point out that we have John Wilkerson, who is a planning commissioner with the city's planning commission, who is attending here tonight as well. From the project management team, from the applicant, we have Chris Robles. We also have Tom Filippi, who is the applicant's consultant, who works with Filippi Engineering. And then from the city's environmental consultant team over at DUDEC, we have Christine Cronenberg, who is the senior project manager, and Angelica Chu, who is an environmental planner with DUDEC. And so now I'd like to hand it off to Albert Enolt, our senior planner with the city's planning division, to talk about the purpose of tonight's scoping meeting.
Thank you, Noah. So the purpose of the meeting is to talk about this project called the Field at Alamo Creek and where we are in the process, and to also receive public comments. So what's causing all of this to happen is underneath the California Environmental Quality Act, when you have a project that has been submitted to a local jurisdiction, that project has to undergo environmental review. And depending on the type of project, the environmental review may create significant impacts. And so it's up to the lead agency, the City of Vacaville, to determine whether or not a project would have significant impacts. Well, in this case, the Fields project, we've conducted an initial assessment of the project and found that the development of this proposal, which we will describe in greater detail later on, would create a significant impact that needs to be mitigated, and that there's possible that there's other impacts that cannot be mitigated. And so what CEQA requires us to do in these types of situations is, once we identify that a project is going to have this type of an impact, is to send out a notice of preparation to all the responsible agencies that would be interested in this project and the preparation of the environmental document. And so we did that. We also sent it out to property owners and existing tenants within 600 feet of the project site. And what that notice of preparation did was it identified what the project was, and it offered a comment period for when people can submit comments to the city. And the whole purpose of the comments is to take in information that people believe would be necessary as part of the environmental analysis before we get started with that, before we prepare all the detailed analysis that explains how this project is going to impact the environment. In this particular case, what we've identified is that there would be a supplemental environmental impact report that would be needed to be provided and disclosed for the impacts associated with this project. So what CEQA says in these types of situations is that when you are in the process of preparing a document and you're wanting to get public comments, you can send out a public notice to people, but you can also hold what's called a scoping meeting. And that's a meeting where you're trying to facilitate discussion between the public and between responsible agencies and lead agency about what those potential impacts need to be disclosed or analyzed within that environmental document. And that's the whole purpose behind this scoping meeting, is we're wanting to gather input from the public, from any responsible agencies or trustee agencies. And the whole purpose is to determine what the scope or the content that's going to be described in that environmental document. It's really to identify any significant environmental issues to evaluate. We're also looking to identify whether or not there's any reasonable alternatives that we should be exploring as part of our analysis, and to identify any mitigation measures that need to be explored as part of our environmental analysis. So here's a little bit about the project. The project being called the Fields at Alamo Creek. It is being proposed on a site that is 33.6 acres in size. The proposal is to construct 223 residential units, but this would also include 6.71 acre agricultural buffer, as well as a 0.52 acre pocket park. The project would rely heavily on the larger development that's located to the southwest of the project, called the Farm at Alamo Creek, for its streets, for its sewer, water, and storm drain improvements to serve the site. There are a number of entitlements that are required for this project, including it needs to annex into our city limits. It would need to amend the city's general plan and zoning map. It would also include a specific plan amendment to that farm at Alamo Creek project. It also include the tentative subdivision map, as well as review that we'll need to undergo with the Solano County Airport Land Use Commission. And this is a map, an aerial image that the city has produced that shows the location of where this Fields at Alamo Creek project is located in relation to the project site. You'll see it is located to the northeast of Elmira Road and Leisure Town Road at that intersection. The area in pink is where the previously approved farm at Alamo Creek is located. And this is in addition to that development area that's being proposed. You'll see that there is a portion of planned open space, and then primary frontage access would be provided on Hawkins Road. This is a more detailed map that shows the relation of the adjoining subdivision, the farm at Alamo Creek that has been previously approved, and how this project would splice in and use those existing or those future roadway improvements to access the site. And also it shows frontage improvements along Hawkins Road. You'll see the city limit line in orange, and then the city's sphere of influence. As I mentioned earlier, that this project does need to annex into our city limits. And so the proposal would be to move that orange line so it aligns and encompasses the project boundary for this project. You'll see there is an agricultural buffer or open space that is required by the city for projects that are abutting agricultural lands to make sure that there's a buffer between any agricultural activities that are occurring outside the city limits. So how did we arrive at supplemental EIR? Well, it really stemmed from the idea that the farm at Alamo Creek has already undergone environmental analysis that disclosed the impacts associated with their project. And that was originally approved in 2019. And the certification given by City Council disclosed that that particular project was going to create significant impacts on the environment, and that there were overriding considerations to consider when approving that project. And so they certified that final environmental impact report. Well, as you saw by the aerial imagery, this project is a bit of an extension to the farm development because it would be connecting to the roadways that are planned within the farm at Alamo Creek, but also relies heavily on the infrastructure for sewer, water, and drainage that the farm at Alamo Creek would be providing as part of the proposal. And so the basis for this idea that it's a supplemental to that original EIR is that all of the analysis that was done to determine what kind of sewer capacity, water, and drainage was necessary for the farm at Alamo Creek is that all of that would be able to serve the fields at Alamo Creek Extension. There are a number of other elements that have not been analyzed, such as impacts to agricultural or avian species that need to be considered, as well as maybe unknown archaeological remains that might be under the ground. And so what the California Environmental Quality Act says about these particular situations is that you could prepare supplemental analysis to that original environmental impact report for the farm at Alamo Creek. And the whole purpose is to describe what are the specific changes that are occurring that this addition onto the project would create. And so the whole point of this is to make sure that if there, whether or not the previous environmental impact report adequately can be applied to this project with some minor changes. And if it can, then this would be the appropriate pathway. And that this supplemental environmental impact report would need to contain information that clearly shows that the previous EIR is adequate. So here's what the project, the supplemental EIR is intended to disclose. What we've gathered so far is that there will be significant impacts created to these different categories: air quality, biological resources, land use, utilities and service systems, as well as transportation. And that these are really the affected elements that are going to be described in great detail in that supplemental EIR. The other elements that will be described as more of an executive summary um, are identified on this slide. And these are impacts to these particular areas were previously disclosed in adequacy in that original farm at Alamo Creek environmental impact report. But we still intend to discuss these as part of an executive summary within that supplemental environmental impact report. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to DUDEC to maybe add some additional context, as they are the SEPA consultant that the city has hired to undergo this, this large task of preparing the supplemental environmental impact report.
Thank you, Albert. It's Christine Cronenberg from DUDEC. Just to piggyback on what Albert walked you through, this project and this particular parcel of land was contemplated as part of the Farm at Alamo Creek specific plan. There was always the intent that this parcel of land might develop in the future. It is a continuation of the existing agricultural land that comprised the Farm at Alamo Creek specific plan. So we've identified, as Albert mentioned, we've identified there are a couple of topical areas where the analysis will need to be evaluated specific to this project, because the prior analysis in the Farm at Alamo Creek specific plan may not have fully covered that particular issue area. But as Albert mentioned, all of these other topics that are listed here will be addressed in this supplemental EIR, but they will be addressed primarily explaining how the impacts associated with aesthetics, for example, were previously evaluated and or will be covered by the specific plan, because the project is proposing to amend the Farm at Alamo Creek specific plan to be included within that specific plan. So they will be beholden to all of those design guidelines and all of those requirements that are already set forth in that particular document. So also, as Albert mentioned, the purpose of this meeting is to solicit any comments specific to issues or topics you feel are important and should be further evaluated in this supplemental EIR. We're here to answer any clarifying questions you may have to help form your comment, but we're not here to directly address comments. That is something that we will address in the supplemental EIR. And we're available. I'm here, as is my colleague Angelica, so we can, help assist the city in addressing any clarifying comments folks may have to help form their specific letter or email they might be drafting, raising those issues they would like to see this document address. So that concludes my overview, unless there's anything else, Albert, you feel I should touch on?
That's perfectly fine. Thank you, Christine. I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance for you to introduce yourself, as you are assisting the city in the preparation of this document. So with that, we'll turn it to public comments. Really, this is again intended to receive comments, and the best kind of comments are the ones that are written and then are submitted to the city, so that way we have actual letter that we can refer to. It does look like we have a light lobby, so for those of you that are here that are watching this presentation, if you have comments or things that you would like to see be evaluated as part of this analysis, now would be the time to make those comments. And if there's anybody that is having trouble unmuting, I believe the securities do allow you to unmute. Noah, do you happen to know if somebody is on a cellular device, what's necessary to unmute?
Yeah, so if you're on a cellular device or dialing in by phone, you should dial *9 in order to unmute.
Looks like we have a member in the lobby under the name CG that has unmuted. Go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Well, we're gonna go ahead and give it a couple more minutes, just in case there's anybody that's dealing with some difficulty unmuting or trying to provide their comments. Again, you can always provide us a written letter. You can send that letter to my email address that you see on the screen. You can also grab information from that link that you see on that screen. You type that into URL, and you'll be able to download the project plans and find out more information about this project. The review period for this project is from March 23rd to April 13th. And what we're looking to do is once that period closes, we'll be able to move on to the next step. So we'll give it a couple more minutes and see if anybody has any comments that they'd like to add.
And
Albert,
again, if you're dialing in by phone, make sure to dial *6 to unmute.
and let me just make a quick clarification. The comment period actually runs through April 24th.
Thank you for that. April 24th.
Yes. So folks have a couple of weeks to provide their comments.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying to use the chat function, but it's not working. So I guess I'll say it here. Does this proposed project include any affordable units?
The current proposal does not.
Okay. Okay. When do you anticipate submitting the tentative track for a planning commission review, for staff review, formal filing?
A public hearing for something like this is probably not anticipated into the second half of this year.
Okay. I would just encourage that bikeway planning be put into effect in that along the access corridor right south of it on Elmira, there was a tragic accident with a biker about a year ago. And so as you're getting into unincorporated area of the county, which doesn't have widened lanes for bikes, that you kind of anticipate doing that for this project as the main access extends off of Leisure Town Road. So is that Murray? Yeah. So the east-west road incorporates some type of bike lane. So we don't have another reoccurrence of a fatality cyclist.
Okay, thank you for that comment.
You're welcome.
And this is Christine again. That is a great comment. If you're able to provide it in writing, that would be great. You can always just shoot an email to Albert. He has his email address provided. We took
Okay.
notes, but it's always good to get it in your own words as well.
Okay, I'll do that. And I'll send you the newspaper article of that particular unfortunate incident last year.
Yeah,
And
that'd be great.
yeah, because you're dealing with agricultural territory, which it does not accommodate typical pedestrian cyclist use. And so if you're going to extend into unincorporated area, well, you got to start doing some city design to accommodate anticipated use. So yeah, I'll send you an email. I see it's at albert.enault@cityofacaville.com. Okay.
Yes. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it looks like we have a couple more attendees. If you'd like to make a comment, now would be the time. We'll give it a couple more minutes. If we're not seeing any more comments arising, then what we'll do is we'll move on to explaining what the next steps are. And as Noah mentioned, this is a recorded presentation, so it will be uploaded online. For anybody who is interested at forwarding this to other friends or family members that would be interested in learning a little bit more about this project. All right, well, not seeing any more questions on this one. Just a reminder about that review period closing on April 24th. That is up until that point when we'll wait for comments before we start moving on to the next steps, which are we're going to be documenting all these public comments. They're absolutely necessary to achieve compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. So we use these comments in the preparation of this supplemental environmental impact report. So as we're going along, we will prepare what's called a draft, and that draft report is going to be circulated for public review, and we'll be sending out a notice of availability. So if there is anybody who would be interested in getting on and noticing for this one, feel free to send me an email or to let us know here at City Hall. You can give us a call at 707-449-5140, and we'll add you to the mailing list. But we'll be sending out a notice of availability when that draft supplemental environmental impact report is ready for public review and consumption. And there's also a review period associated with that when we'll be waiting to receive public comments before moving on to the next step. The whole point about that is, again, receiving public comments, making sure that people are aware of the proposal and asking questions and providing their comments back to us. So with that, I think we'll conclude our scoping meeting. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.